Welcome. I'm Mark Latender, a systems consultant with RISC, provider of the VTA, Learnforia, and Space Learning platforms, any of which can be the foundation of your learning ecosystem. Today, I'm going to review Team Management, one of VTA's most flexible tools to automatically keep your teams up to date. Similar to VTA advisor surveys that allow performance managers the ability to update teams by answering questions on a survey, Team Management eliminates the need to go through a series of questions and instead provides an action grid that primary supervisors can use to quickly approve team changes, such as adding new assignments, removing existing assignments, and copying assignments from one person to another. You may already have processes in place to manage your team assignments and are asking, when should team management be used to assign people to a team? Let's look deeper at what team management is and if it's the right tool for your organization. Here are the people involved in the team management process. The primary supervisor is the only person with the rights to assess a TMG and learner. They are associated to a person on their student record. A delegate is someone who can temporarily substitute for a primary supervisor to assess students. Keep in mind that when a delegate is given permission to submit team management approvals, the primary supervisor cannot. Approvals are only permissible by one person at a time. Primary supervisors can set their own delegates and learner, so there is no additional administrative burden when using delegates. And if you ever need to make changes on behalf of a primary supervisor, since you cannot make team changes in Administrator for managed teams, you can set yourself up as their delegate and make the team change in Learner. And finally, a student is any person with a VTA account who is assessed in Learner. In the charts on the right, you can see what the organization looks like when a primary supervisor does not have a delegate and one who does. When looking at team records, you may have noticed the administrative control option and wondered what it was, or maybe you just ignored it. If you're not using team management, leave it set to all for all teams. If you are using team management and the team is one that will be controlled by a TMG item, set it to managed. When set to managed, the only way for a person to get on or off the team is via a TMG item. Notice how the Students tab of a team record loses its Add, Delete, and Import buttons when the team uses a managed administrative control. So, when should team management be used to assign people to a team? If one of the following is true, then team management is for you. Either you want to automate the assignment process for entire student groups. For example, if all employees or everyone with these 17 job titles or in work areas A, B, and C should be on a team. Or if you want to open the assignment process to primary supervisors. For example, if phone calls and emails is how you currently determine who needs to be added, you can eliminate the communications and put real-time controls in their hands. Let's look now at what team management can do in Learner. First, it provides primary supervisors with the ability to compare what is currently assigned to a student to what can be assigned. In this image of Peggy's IT training TMG, by reviewing the current column, I can see she currently has Microsoft Office assigned because it is required. As the primary supervisor, I cannot change that. She also has Microsoft Excel, Word, and HTML5 assigned. By reviewing the draft column, I can see Microsoft Office is still required and cannot be removed. There's no selector to remove it. Notice that the draft column is set to make the following changes: add Microsoft Access and remove HTML5. Once approved by the primary supervisor, those assignment changes would take place immediately. The next thing team management can do in Learner is compare one student's assignments versus others in their peer group. You can add multiple people to the TMG grid, so comparing what one person has assigned versus another is just a matter of selecting and adding them to the team management grid. After you've compared one student's assignments versus others in their peer group, you may want to copy the ratings from one person to another. To do that, select the person with the draft values that you want to copy from. Then select the copy action from the drop-down above the grid and click Go. A pop-up window will list all people who are associated to the primary supervisor for that TMG. Select who should get the copied draft and click OK. The draft values will be set and ready to approve. If you have primary supervisors who prefer to use a language other than English, you can have the team management page in Learner and all TMG and TMG items made available for use in any language. The primary supervisor's browser will be used to determine the language to display the information. In this screenshot on the left is the team management and TMG values as entered in English. By changing my browser's preferred language to Spanish on the right, you can see the team management and TMG values as entered in Spanish. Let's look at team management's main component, team management groups, or TMGs. A TMG is one or more teams tied together for a common purpose, which either automatically assigns people to the team or allows primary supervisors to make team assignment changes. When primary supervisors are allowed to make changes, it assigns the right training according to risk or depth level, preferred language, and input from their primary supervisor. You can set your TMG process to be simple, such as using an assign, do not assign scale, or complex using a risk or depth level plus the language. On the right is a visual overview of a complete TMG record. Within a TMG are the items that a primary supervisor will assess. Each item is associated to a single team that it will control. The TMG is made available by having an open period. The TMG period controls the active date range, how notifications will be sent, and the assignment of participants. If you've used advisor surveys in the past and then needed to update your survey as the organization changed, you might have retired your survey, made a copy, added your changes, and then published your new survey, requiring a new approval. With team management, you can actually unpublish the TMG, make your TMG item changes, and republish it without the need to retire and copy. Just open the TMG, set the stage to unpublished, and wait 1 hour. The 1 hour allows anyone currently using it in Learner to finish their work. Now, what is a team management group item, or a TMG item? An item represents a topic or category within a TMG. A valid TMG item requires that a team be associated, so when a primary supervisor selects that rating, there is a team to add the person to. When using a multi-level rating scale such as high-low, a valid TMG item requires that a team be associated to each level. So if your primary supervisor rates your need for Excel training as high, you get a more in-depth course, whereas if they rate you low, you might just get an introductory course. Finally, TMG items can be inactivated when no longer needed. If other TMG items remain relevant, you can simply inactivate the no longer needed ones to remove them from view and assessment in Learner. As I said, a TMG can either automatically assign people to the team or allow primary supervisors to make team assignment changes. You control how it behaves by selecting or not selecting the Supervisor Can Manage option on the record. If not selected, the item is considered required and everyone assigned to the TMG period is added to the team. There's no need for a primary supervisor to take action. If selected, the item is considered manageable. Anyone assigned to the TMG period may need to be added to the team, but only a primary supervisor knows for sure. After you've added your TMG items and made them valid by associating a team to each one, the next step in setting up a TMG is creating a TMG period. When creating a TMG period, you are setting the date range that the TMG will be active. You can define the start date and then either leave the end date blank to create an open period that never ends, or define an end date and create multiple periods. You then set how often it must be approved. If using an open period, you can, for example, require that it be reviewed and approved annually. If you define an end date, you may choose to only require one approval without the need for a frequency. Next, you'll set when emails start to alert primary supervisors that an approval is pending and how often they should receive a note. For example, you may start the email alerts 1 month prior to the approval date and then send them weekly until the approval is submitted. Finally, the TMG period is used to define the students or student groups that will be in the participant pool. When a TMG period is active, between the start and end dates set on the period, the following team management functions are available. Primary supervisors or their delegates can make changes in Learner. The TMG current period status report can be used in Administrator and Learner to monitor progress on approvals and list what is currently assigned versus any draft values set for each TMG item. Review notifications are sent to primary supervisors nightly, and team assignments for required TMG items are updated nightly for participants assigned to the period. Team management triggers the following email notifications. Overnight, the TMG mailer program launches to determine which primary supervisors need an alert that a review is pending. Learner also sends notes as drafts are sent and approvals are submitted. Some clients require students to be notified about TMG draft changes prior to an approval so they can discuss or challenge them, and training is not updated until both sides agree on the changes. If your team management process does not require a draft note to be sent, primary supervisors can skip that step and approve a TMG. The approval action in Learner triggers a note to students alerting them that the TMG was approved and to check their My Plan page for any changes. If your system happens to also have the VTA New Requirements email on, overnight they would be sent a note listing any new training requirements added. There are two Learner menu options that will appear when using team management. My Team Manager is used by primary supervisors or delegates to assess and approve team management for students. My Manage Teams is used by students to see the current and draft team management ratings applied by their primary supervisor. In Learner, the primary supervisor needs to do two things: load the team management grid and submit approvals. To load the grid, they simply select the team management group name, filter for which assessment status types that they want to show. The default is to show all, regardless of status, but you can choose to see only those with draft changes that have not yet been approved or students who have never been approved. Next, add filters to help find the students you want to see by group or name, or just select all. With the filter selected, click the Get Students button to load them to the Student Selector box. With the box loaded, select the specific students to include on the grid or use the Select All button. And finally, click the Apply button to load the rating grid. Once the grid is loaded, to submit an approval, first make changes in the draft column. If you are using an open period that needs to be reapproved annually and no changes are needed for this review, you do not need to make changes in the draft values. Next, using the checkbox to the left of the person's name above the current column, select the students to approve. Note that you can approve more than one person at a time if needed by selecting more than one person on the grid. You can also use the Select All option above the TMG name to select everyone on the grid. You will then select Approve from the Action drop-down list and click the Go button to submit the approval. There is one report that gives you a full view of where your TMG assessment process is at, related to who's been approved, who's pending, and what values are being set. The current period status report identifies the draft and approval status for a team management group period for each person. It is available in back office under the student reports and in Learner under the supervisor reports. The summary version includes the primary supervisor responsible for submitting approvals, the student and their basic profile details, the name of the TMG and TMG period, and the assessment status for the period. The detail version will include all TMG items with their current and draft values. The team management process from start to finish varies slightly if you require students to be notified about TMG draft changes prior to an approval. Process 1, shown here, requires drafts to be sent and works as follows. A system administrator creates the TMG, adds the items, opens the period, and then publishes it. The publish process will add team assignments for any required items. Overnight, primary supervisors are notified that a TMG review and approval are pending. In Learner, they will make changes to the draft values and send the draft to the student for review. The student reviews the draft and discusses it with their primary supervisor. In Learner, using the student's feedback, primary supervisors make further changes and submit the approval. Learner immediately notifies the student that the approval was submitted and their My Plan is updated. If your team management process does not require a draft note to be sent, primary supervisors can skip that step and approve a TMG. Process 2 does not require drafts to be sent and works as follows. A system administrator creates the TMG, adds the items, opens a period, and then publishes it. The publish process will add team assignments for any required TMG items. Overnight, primary supervisors are notified that a TMG review and approval are pending. In Learner, they will make changes to the draft values and submit their approval. Learner immediately notifies the student that the approval was submitted and their My Plan is updated. I hope this overview of team management makes you think about your team assignment process and how VTA's team management tool can make managing your teams a lot easier. If you want to discuss getting your system set up to use team management at no additional cost, contact VTA support at risc-inc.com today.